Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. We have two very special guests. You've probably seen them over at the Detroit Bad Boys on their podcast, The Pindown. If you haven't checked it out already, definitely do. We got Blake Silverman, West Davenport. Fellas, welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you.
And thank you for coming on our podcast. It's great to finally get this crossover going in a super exciting time for Pistons. A super like I need like anxiety meds almost to watch this team, but it's been fun.
Yeah, true crossover, right? You joined us over on our show, and then now here we are on yours. I don't know, it's like just an extension of the same episode. The conversation could just continue.
It's like the
Literally.
jersey swap of like the
Right.
podcast game.
I always say that there's enough room to everyone to eat in the Pistons community because we all have different opinions. And I just like showing support to anyone that I can that has a Pistons podcast. I never think that I'm, too big to go on a podcast and vice versa. I'm sure you guys kind of feel the same way.
100%. And
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you specifically have always shouted us out, showed us support. So we really appreciate that. I mean, sorry to speak for you, Wes, but I know you feel the same way. So overall, Anthony, thank you. And looking forward to talking hoops.
There's a
Before
big ocean of Pistons basketball content, so we're all just pouring some more water into it. It's just fun.
I love it. I love that Pistons Twitter is such a huge community. And I always tell like other fans that aren't Pistons fans, I'm like, I don't know, man. Pistons Twitter is like top three in my opinion. We're pretty crazy. But before we do get into the podcast, what I like to do anytime I have a guest is if you guys want to plug and promote yourself, social media, whatever you're working on, work life, the floor is yours. Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, for me and Wes, our podcast, The Pin Down, you can catch us weekly. We try to go live Thursday nights, but now in the season, that's a little bit fluid based on the Pistons schedule, our schedules. So you can find that on DetroitBadBoys.com. You can leave us questions to talk about. Obviously, support all the great written work that's going on DetroitBadBoys.com. Other than that, for me, I just started writing for Sports Illustrated, covering more like national stuff. So you're gonna get your sports news from somewhere. So go to si.com and you'll probably see my name on there at least a few times a week to check things out. And I'll throw it over to Wes because I know you have more stuff going on too.
Yeah, the only real other thing to add to that, I think, for us with the podcast, we do have a phone line. So if you guys are listening to this, want to call in and actually hear your voice on our show, you could go to the description of each episode. You can find that phone number there. Leave us a message. We always love doing those. And then on top of that, I also help out with the Pistons Pulse podcast there with Bryce Simon and Omari Senko for the second. And obviously that's a fantastic show too. Like you were saying, Anthony, there's just so many great Pistons podcasts. So I always got to give that a shout out as well.
Yeah, I love the Pistons Pulse. I love the food takes and the lawn stuff this summer. I'm telling you,
Yep.
that was A+ content. Shout
That's
out to
dog
Bryce.
days right there, man.
Yeah, dog days. We were just talking about it before we got on. The lawn stuff this summer kept me going, kept me laughing. But I have all of your links in the description below. So the pin down, if you guys want to go subscribe to Detroit Bad Boys YouTube, you can go down description below. If you want to follow Blake or Wes on Twitter, you definitely should. Really insightful stuff. Description below. That'll take you straight to their Twitter. But we're going to get into talking some Detroit Pistons. So I wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts of this week. I feel like we could be 3-0. We're 2-1. But overall, what have you guys thought of just this week of Pistons basketball?
Yeah, I mean, my thought last night, we're recording the night after the Pistons NBA Cup win in Toronto. Like, I'm just begging for them to play a normal basketball game at some point soon. It's super fun. Like, I can't complain, especially after the season we just have, but the different ways that these basketball games have gone on, especially the endings, are like they really keep you on the edge of your seat. And man, it's just like I'd almost just love a calm, normal basketball game at this point. But all the credit in the world to the Pistons. Even, I mean, the loss in Milwaukee was the way they lost it was really tough. But in a game where you're playing without Jaden Ivey, Tim Hardaway Jr., Simone Fontecchio, that blew another big lead, but then came back to force overtime. Well, maybe not force overtime, sent the game to overtime after those missed free throws from Ron Holland. But I just thought it was great to see them at least stick in that one when the clear best player on the floor is Giannis. And that was also the second night of a back-to-back where they traveled. So tough loss, just I guess not the end of the world. And especially after they go to Toronto a couple nights later and get a win in another crazy way, especially in an NBA Cup game where they're now sitting 2-0 and they have their next Cup games are against the Pacers and Bucks. So those are tough ones, but hey, you split those, you never know. You can make it to the knockout stage, and that would be huge for this young team. So I've really enjoyed seeing them get up for those games, and then overall just night in and night out, at least playing competitive basketball is super fun to watch, although definitely anxiety inducing.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think that the variability for a young team like this is pretty great, right? If we're looking long term, you want these young guys to be put in different positions almost every single game. And, whether or not they're finding a way to win these close games, I guess is neither here nor there. It's more just the fact that they are getting the experience. Like, how valuable for Ron Holland that he gets to go to the free throw line, game on the line, with a chance to win it with, 0.7 or 0.2 seconds left, whatever it was, right? I know he missed it, and yeah, he didn't lose them the game, but he did lose out on an opportunity to win. But at the same time, like, that's valuable for the guy. He's 19 years old. He's going to be in many more situations like that, you would hope, in the future. So to get it already now, get it out of the way, be able to learn from it, grow. And you could say that same thing for the entire team, right? I mean, you look at in that Bucks game again, I think they had an 18-point lead at one point in the third quarter. They blow it. They go down 10 and then come back and still tie the game again. Like, that's so valuable for all these young guys. And for the fans, we're having a lot of fun watching it, even though it's a little tough on the heart. Maybe we're losing a year or two at the end of the lives here with stress. But, I think it's win-win all around. So I'm having fun. It's good basketball. It's entertaining. And, I think it's valuable for all these young guys on the roster.
I agree. I've been calling the Pistons the cardiac kids, just because I have chest pains every fourth quarter because I don't know what's going to happen. I think one of my subscribers called them the Panic Pistons, which I think will just stick. Because these leads.
I like that. I like that. Panic Pistons. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather watch close games like this down to the wire than like last year where it's like 20, like 30-point blowouts. Like, you already knew the game was over in the first quarter. You're like, why am I watching this? Why am I torturing myself? I'd much rather kind of watch like competitive basketball this way. And JB's got these guys playing really well.
100%. I remember last year I wasn't watching a lot of games live because I was going to a lot of Motor City Cruise games. So a lot of times I would rewatch the Pistons in the morning with a cup of coffee, and I would know what the score was and I would just be dreading it. And like sometimes I still just rewatch something to just take another look, and it's not going back and like dreading being able to watch. And even if you're watching live, when they get out to a huge hole in the first half, it's like, why are you watching in the second half? And this year hasn't been like that at all. So it makes it a lot easier to watch as a fan, definitely a lot easier to talk about it. Yeah, I saw someone tweet out today that the Pistons are single-handedly bringing back like the cigarette industry, which I laughed at. Definitely not condoning it by any means, but I thought that was a great tweet.
Yeah, that's actually kind of funny. I did kind of want to transition into some news that we got. I thought Christmas came early, you guys. A lot of people were speculating when Ausar Thompson is going to get cleared. Well, he got cleared by the NBA. I want to say it's like competition panel. I probably butchered that. But what did you guys kind of think of when you saw this news, and what are you looking forward to when Ausar does eventually get cleared to, compete in Pistons basketball games again?
I was happy to see him get cleared. Kind of like you, I didn't know when it was going to happen. I honestly thought we would be waiting for much longer. I mean, Ausar has already been out for a pretty long time. If you count in the off season, and we all expected him to be ready for the start of the season, and then had to get through the player panel and everything like that. So I was happy to see him get cleared. I mean, since he's got cleared, he's missed a few games, which I think is to be expected. I'm excited to see him get back in the lineup. I mean, I'm not really sure when that will be, but I'm super excited to see how he's used. I'm assuming JB will ease him into the rotation. Me and Wes were talking about this on our show the other night, about like he probably could be the backup power forward. And if he is in the starting lineup, it's probably at the expense of Tim Hardaway Jr. when he's back and healthy, who's played really well so far. So I'm interested to see how JB uses him. But more specifically, like, where do those minutes come from? Maybe a mix of Ron Holland and Simone Fontecchio, because you definitely don't want to fully take Ron Holland out of the rotation after what he's done. But bringing back an athlete like a Ausar, defender, we don't know what his shot looks like, where he's made improvements with his handle. So I'm just excited to see those things. I mean, don't know when it's going to happen, but at least we know it's going to happen soon. And obviously the health scare is all good, which we thought was the case, but it's definitely exciting to know that for sure.
Yeah, I think exciting is the word I'd have picked too. I saw it. I was pretty pumped. I think I retweeted it like within seconds. I was just real excited. Ausar Thompson's fun to watch play basketball, right? I mean, for all the challenges that he brings with the jump shot, with the pairing with Duran, all the potential problems and, things that JB Bickerstaff is going to have to figure out. At the end of the day, he's an incredible athlete. He's an amazing defender, and he makes really fun and entertaining things happen while he's on the basketball court. So, like at the end of the day, I am just very excited to watch Ausar Thompson play basketball again. And I think the only thing I'd really add that's of any substance was that I was under the impression during that kind of competition committee process that he was already on his own doing NBA level workouts, right? But it doesn't seem like that was the case. He did an interview. Blake, you mentioned it. We talked about this on our show the other day, but he did an interview with the beat reporter pool after a practice, and they all made note that that was the hardest practice he had done, and that they're actually trying to now legitimately ramp him back up conditioning wise. So it's just, maybe something to keep in mind with skill development type stuff. If he really was limited on what he could do cardio wise over the offseason, he may not have been able to take a leap as a shooter or as a finisher, things like that. He could have improved in other ways. I think noticeably he's bigger, right? You look stronger. Mm-hmm. That's something you could do without really pushing it cardio wise. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. And that was something that was surprising to me afterwards. I was kind of under the impression he'd get cleared and then, okay, get 1 or 2 practices in and he's good to go. But kind of looks like it might be a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I think the first picture I saw in Summer League, I thought he grew because he was standing next to Kade during Summer League, and it looked like he grew an inch or two. I was like, okay, it looks like he grew a little bit. And like to your point, Wes, he looks like more bulky. Looks like he's kind of like been lifting weights. There was one thing.
Chest and shoulders. The dude's just jacked right
he
now.
looks like a
Good
fullback, man. He's huge. One thing, maybe I'm reading too much into it. The Pistons did post the full interview with Ausar, and I want to give a shout out to Cody Davis because he asked Ausar, is your return date in January against your brother? And I've seen a lot of speculation of with people saying he's not coming back until January, February. Maybe I'm reading too much into it because I believe it was Christian Coloco. It took him about a month to come back after he got cleared. So maybe we have to wait until December, maybe January at the latest to, see him back on the basketball court.
Yeah, I know Coloco was out for like a year plus, and I think there were talks that like maybe he wouldn't even be able to play basketball again. So super scary health situation for both of them. So yeah, overall, I'm just excited that Ausar got cleared fairly quickly, and it seems like things are going to plan, although we in the public space just might have not known what was going on behind the scenes, which totally okay. Yeah, I wonder how long it'll take for him to at least like what I'm looking for, I guess, is just for the Pistons to release a injury report where he's doubtful or questionable, so that way we know that he's getting close to it, and then if it's that game or the game after, he'll probably be good to go at that point. But yeah, overall happy that at least we got the announcement that he was cleared when he was, because I feel like these things can take a while, as they should.
Yeah.
Real quick, I don't think he's played his twin yet, right? They missed each other because Amen was injured in summer league, and then he was still injured the first time I think the Pistons played the Rockets last year, and then I think Ausar might have missed the second. Right? Am I misremembering? I don't think they've actually played each other yet.
I think they played last year in Houston, but he was out in the Detroit game, if I remember correctly. Because I do remember
No, that's probably right. Yeah, that's probably right.
Because I do remember James doing like a really huge piece with their older brother Troy Thompson. And then like Bally.
Yeah, that was a good one too. Yeah.
Shout out to Troy, man. Troy's a cool dude. But yeah, I'm really excited to see him come back. The one thing I've missed about him probably the most, and maybe I'm just a nerd, like I miss his cutting. Like not a lot of players on this team cut the way that he could cut. His rebounding, I think, will be really crucial. And the fact that they're top 10 in defensive rating without him just blows my mind.
Yeah, how is that? How does that happen? I mean, it's so nice that like the team is playing the way that they have been without him, because in some of those early losses, when you get out to a slow start, it was just like this team is missing an Ausar Thompson so badly, and it's not a type of player that a lot of teams have in the gate that are ready to come out eventually. So I'm excited to see him come back overall. Like you mentioned, he'll help out with rebounding. I'm excited to see how he has grown as a playmaker, which he's already good at, just needs to help improve the handle and everything a bit more. And the shot, obviously a huge talking point and unknown. I doubt it's going to be anything close to like league average or anything like that. But I mean, below average would be pretty good. And yeah, the conclusion that Wes and I came to when we were talking through it was like, Ausar is going to take some time just because of everything that happened, which is okay because of how the team has been playing right now without him.
Sorry, screwing with the mute button there. You'd think I'm a vet that I'd understand how that dang mute button works, but clearly I don't. I was just going to say to your defensive question, that was something that I'd been looking into a little bit too, just because I take notes during the games, and I take so many notes of misassignments and bad help or just terrible gambles that various players are making. And so it was shocking to me too, like how on earth could they possibly have a good defensive rating? It's because they play the 5th slowest pace in the NBA, and they are top 10 in defensive rebounding percentage. That's what's happening here. They're holding other teams to less possessions. So in terms of like actually scoring per possession, I think probably other teams are doing all right. That's probably closer to average or maybe below average if they could make a stat out of that. But because they play so dang slow and they've got very good defensive rebounders, it's kind of like, well, even if you do score on a bunch of your possessions, you're not going to score a lot.
Yeah, I mean, last night I wanted to throw something at my TV. They could not grab a defensive rebound. Like that was just like that in the Rockets game. I was like, how are they so good at rebounding but can't snag a defensive rebound? Like it just drove me crazy last night.
Yeah, and I mean, against Toronto, it was like Jakob Poeltl had 18 rebounds. I mean, 10 of those were offensive. So.
It's been the guards too. Like the Heat were killing Detroit with guards crashing down to rebound, and it's just because Isaiah Stewart is the only member of this team that boxes out. That's it. That's it. I don't know how they continue to be so dang good at the defensive glass, even when they have these lapses. But like, that's what's going on.
They would probably have way more wins if they hit their free throws and they just boxed out. Like realistically, they could have 8 wins right now. Like you box out in Charlotte, you probably win that basketball game. Like it's wild though.
You could do that the other direction though.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Before we kind of get into the next topic, we do have to hear from our sponsors over at the DraftKings Sportsbook, and we'll be back right after this short message, you guys. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in single elimination in the in-season tourney. First time, here's something special for you guys. New DraftKings customers bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PistonsTalk. That's code PistonsTalk for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in New York. Call 1-877-8-HOPNY or text HOPNY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 1-888-78-977 or visit ccp.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of the Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.com/bball. Okay, you guys, we are back when I give the DraftKings Sportsbook app huge shout out for sponsoring today's podcast. But I want to
a true pro in to read that ad. That was well done. Whoever did that.
No, the fact that it took me, I want to say 6 takes because the font was this little on the script that they give you. I'm like, brother. Appreciate it though, man. Like ad reads are not my strength. Thank God for OBS, and you get to sit, record, stop, record.
Hey, you did great.
Appreciate it, fellas. I did kind of want to get into, this is a fun topic because I think we're all going to have different answers and kind of give, different love to maybe individual players. So which player do you think deserves to get talked about more, maybe outside of Cade Cunningham or Jaden Ivey?
Wes, do you want to go first? I just don't want to steal your answer. I always do on our show, so I'm gonna give you the floor here.
All right. Well, hopefully I don't steal yours then. But you know what? I'm gonna go with Ron Holland just because he's already getting a decent amount of conversation. He's the rookie, he's the shiny new toy. But I've just been so impressed with how he's come in and the way he's approached the start of the season. It's not just that he's playing really well, he is, but I think he's playing really well the right way. He's taking shots that he should be taking. He's making the right defensive reads more often than not. He's making unselfish one-more passes. He's probably one of the best one-more passers on the roster right now as a 19-year-old rookie. And, he's, obviously incredible athlete. He's a good finisher. He creates a little bit for himself in the half court and in transition, and defensively, he's all over the court. So he's fun to watch, but just the fact that he's 19, he's fun to watch because he's got all those tools and he's playing the right way. I've been so impressed. I wasn't expecting someone that raw to look this, not quite polished, but have the decision-making side of things look almost polished. So I think he just needs a big shout out. I've been so impressed with him.
Yeah, I agree with Holland. I'll definitely give another answer, but with Holland, I've been impressed.
Did I steal it?
No, I was going to talk about someone else. So there we go. But yeah, Holland, I've been super impressed. Just on top of that, I think he plays with great energy too. Like if I can take anything away from just looking through the screen, it looks like he almost has a look in his eye that like he wants to go out and get you. He's not scared of really any defensive assignment, like going at anyone, which is pretty impressive for a rookie. And after he missed those free throws against Milwaukee, which made the game go into overtime and the Pistons ended up losing, like he came out against Toronto, made a ton of effort plays, and played really well.
Best game of the year.
Yeah, it didn't seem like that hindered him, which honestly I didn't think it would. It was a huge learning experience. So I'm really impressed with him as well. I mean, he obviously still needs some time, but I think especially with Ausar Thompson out, like I was questioning what Ron Holland's role would be going into the season, but I think after 14 games, he's definitely played his way into like, you have to give me minutes, and that's what rookies need to do. So I'm just impressed with him overall. I like how even though a lot of the shots don't go in, he's not afraid to take them. The game against Toronto was a little like, nah, maybe you shouldn't take some of these, but overall, I like that he's not. It doesn't seem like he's getting in his own head or anything, and he seems like he's growing game over game.
Real quick, just to that, against Toronto in the second half, he actually did. He turned down a couple and instead chose to drive and made a couple of nice plays out of it. So even in game, the kid's adjusting. It's fantastic. 19 in the NBA, unreal.
Yeah.
Cool. You want me to go with mine, or did you have any Ron Holland? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like this player is talked about a lot, so it might be a cheating answer. I was going to go with someone a little more under the radar, but I feel like Malik Beasley just deserves to be talked about so much, like similar to what I was saying about Ron Holland, just what Beasley brings to this team as a veteran who you brought in on a 1-year deal, very affordable contract. Like, you know what he brought in terms of shooting, but he just seems like a true leader, and he just plays so animated with the shimmies and everything he does, which I love. I feel like the Pistons have like needed a player like that. And after Cade's triple-double streak and the win in Atlanta where Kade got his first game winner, the Pistons social team released that video of Malik in the locker room, like giving Kade the game ball and giving a speech around it. So I feel like Johnny Kane said on one of the broadcasts that Beasley is the heart and soul of the team. And obviously everything goes through Kade, but I kind of agree with that. And heading into the season, I was like, this guy fills a need. He's a real NBA player, which they needed to go out and target. But like, if things go wrong during the season, is he a candidate to get traded at the deadline to a contender? And now I'm just like, you got to do what you can to keep this guy in Detroit. Like, he's only 27 years old, and pay him a little bit more money to stay. And it feels like he wants to be here too. So I just love watching Malik Beasley play, and I'm super impressed with what he's done so far.
Yeah, I was going to say Malik Beasley. Shout out to Unk. Don't call him Unk. He gets mad. Because Bobby Clipman called him Unk first day, which is absolutely wild. But
I love that.
I'm going to go with the player that has stepped up recently, and that's Wendell Moore Jr.
That was my other one. That was my under the radar one.
He's been impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been so impressed with him because when we traded in the draft to select Bobby Clipman, he was just kind of like, a lot of Pistons fans were like, oh, he's just a throw-in piece. They'll probably waive him this summer, get someone else. But he's filled in as Simone of Fontecchio has kind of like dealt with that foot injury. Defensively, I really like the way he's playing. He kind of reminds me of like a Bruce Brown light in a sense, where he's just kind of everywhere, can defend, really good at. He had a couple of plays yesterday where he was cutting to the basket, grabbing rebounds. He had one play where Kade wasn't paying attention and he dove on the floor for the ball and called a timeout. Like,
saved a turnover.
I love it, man. Like, I just love the energy, and to have a guy like that at kind of the end of your bench, I think is a luxury.
Yeah, and like you talk about guys improving, right? Wendell Moore did not look very good in Summer League. He did not look very good in the preseason. And he's just continued to kind of develop back, behind closed doors. And here he is in injury relief when the team really needs him. And he's a guy that steps up. I mean, big time. You need a shout out for that. I like the Bruce Brown comp too. I think I like that a lot. I think that's pretty good. He's been impactful. It's been fun.
Yeah. I was intrigued by Wendell Moore when the trade happened to bring him in, just because he was a guy who came out of Duke as a junior and showed he had like the frame and I guess the skills of a guy who would make a lot of money in the NBA, but just because of his college career, it didn't shake out that way. And where he landed in Minnesota, he just didn't really have the opportunity. I wondered if he was going to get that opportunity with the Pistons. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a true everyday rotation piece in the long run, but like you said, having a guy like that on the end of your bench is a luxury as well, and especially for someone that a team was just simply trying to get off his money, and he's been impactful when he's needed to be called upon for the Pistons.
I mean, his job, right, is just to make life really hard for JB Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon, right? If he keeps playing really well, you know, a 6'5" strong kind of wing player who can shoot the ball and plays defense like that, like, yeah, make it hard not to play him. He's still young, he's still improving. Make it hard not for Trajan Langdon not to trade away a veteran that's ahead of him because he's pushing really hard for minutes. Like, he's doing his job, he's doing it really well. And you just, you know, you love to see guys step up and kind of have an impact like that and improve their games like that, and show out when they're called upon on, you know, teams like the Pistons that are rebuilding. That's kind of, I don't know, that's one of the more fun storylines that can always come out of seasons like this. So I'm glad we're getting one so early.
Yeah, because I even remember Pistons. You know how Pistons fans are on Twitter. As soon as we make the trade, they're like, "Who is that? Never heard of them." Like, we're probably gonna waive them.
Right.
And him and Marcus Sasser were so huge last night. I thought those
Yes.
two, when they came in, you know, second
Against
third
the Bucks
quarter,
too.
yeah. I mean, like, just playing like really good, solid minutes, and those are guys at the end of the bench don't get a whole lot of burn, a whole lot of playing time, but next man up mentality, and I absolutely love that.
100%.
All right, so we're gonna get into probably something that we've talked about earlier in the podcast, and that is blowing leads. So, how concerned should we be with the Pistons blowing leads, and can they fix this issue?
I mean, I feel like it kind of starts and stops with the turnover conversation. And also it's like I don't know what happens in the third quarters, but a lot of times it's just like giving the ball up down the stretch as well. But against Toronto, the Pistons actually won the turnover battle very narrowly. They turned it over 13 times and Toronto did 14. But even with that, Kade had 4 turnovers. He averages 5 on the season. He's gonna turn the ball over. So it's just like, can you limit the almost careless ones or just ones that happen down the stretch where it's the Pistons are up 7 and you give up the ball, it leads to a 3 on the other end, and then like you're getting into really scary territory really quick. So yeah, I think it just mainly they need to figure out how to turn the ball over less. Like, yes, Cade's a big one in that conversation, but it's not only him too. So overall, I just think if you can take care of the ball, and Wes mentioned like the pace and everything, I feel like the Pistons are giving up a lot of their own possessions as well, which is kind of killing them. So if you can find ways to limit that, I think you should be able to protect leads a little better. And it also is a degree of just being such a young team that's learning how to play full games and everything like that. It's looked tough, but hopefully over time and with the new players you brought in, you can kind of get used to it and just build upon like saving the lead like they did in Toronto little by little.
Yeah, you know, to me, I'd say the age thing is where I'd lean with this one as well. Like, I think it's important that we, you know, or at least that I, as a fan, I don't want them to skip steps, right? This is just kind of a step in that process. The Pistons are the 4th youngest team in the NBA, and as a product of that, they have the 4th fewest average number of prior NBA seasons under their belt. So not only are they young, but the young players they have aren't like, 21 and have played in the league for a couple of years. They have some of those guys, but by and large, it's about 3 years of experience on the Pistons roster on average. So like this is going to happen. I know we're going to talk about the turnovers a little bit later too, and Blake kind of previewed that. Young teams turn the ball over. Young teams blow leads. And what you want is kind of exactly what we've seen. You want the young team to be in positions to blow leads so that as those leads continue to be blown and as you continue to learn what happened, you're figuring out how to play with that lead. And now maybe in a year or 2 years, now you never lose the lead, or you almost never lose that lead. And same thing with the turnovers. Like when a team gets down double digits and they start to get desperate, they turn the temperature up on your ball handlers a little bit. That's happened almost every game, and that's why you've seen when the Pistons get out to those leads, all of a sudden there's a turnover streak. Like, well, they didn't expect it. Of course they didn't expect it. They've never been in that position before, but now they have. And so, you hope for small baby step progressions throughout the year. But, in terms of being concerned with it, I'm not concerned. I think this is just part of growth. You've got a really young team. Not everyone, but so many rookie contracts, so many young players, and the young players that they have spent, 1, 2, 3 seasons being really, really bad, past few years. So, I just think it's part of the process.
To your point, I kind of think it's a blessing in disguise because having like such big leads, like the Hawks game still lives in my head rent free because they were up over 18 points and then the Hawks come back and then they have to close out the game. I think my biggest issue isn't so much turnovers are a big issue of why they are blowing leads, but I think offensively we've seen when they move the ball and it looks great, but there are possessions where it's just ISO,
especially in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, bad processing, forcing passes where you probably should just pass the ball to somebody else and not kind of like get tunnel vision or fixated on a certain teammate. And I think over time they'll learn JB's system. They'll learn to, swing the ball side to side. But I think overall, I've liked what I've seen, but I do get concerned. I think there was I have my notes right here from the Raptors game last night of, not scoring for 10 straight possessions. Like stuff like that is where I get concerned with because then it gets stagnant and then you're just not playing team basketball.
No, I think it's a good thing you bring up too, right? I mean, they're not only are they young, but they are still learning this system. This is brand new. And there are times where it looks really good. And then there's a lot of times there in recent fourth quarters where it just turns into, hey, Tobias Harris, go to the elbow and let's see what you can do. That's not going to be productive fourth quarter offense. So like you said, maybe that's just a product of not necessarily improving as a player, but improving as a player within JB's system. Because it's also important to point out, like we've pointed it out before, that Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, those guys sometimes in those turnover streaks, it's not just Kade, it's them too, and that's weird, right? For veterans to get loose with the ball like that. So I think that's a really good point, Anthony. It's probably system based. They're still learning it.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people want to get on Kate's ass. Is he a point guard? Is he not? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get into those conversations. I mean, I posted a meme about it just for fun. I was just like, some of these Pistons fans, like I had some old man, like literally like write me a thesis in all caps of why Kate sucks. I was like, you need to go out, rake your leaves, and leave me alone. Like, get out of here.
Touch grass. Yeah, I mean, when it's the star, I guess there's always going to be those conversations. But I feel like with Kade specifically, it's definitely like he's been incredible this season so far. I mean, against Toronto, he didn't shoot the ball by any means well, but he still had 15 points, 10 assists, and 6 boards, like flirted with a triple double again. So
and a clutch 3 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that was a good thing to see because after the first like 5 or 6 games, the conversation was Kade needs to find ways to take over down the stretch in the clutch, and like he's shown like that game winner against Atlanta too. Like he's shown the ability to be able to take over. I mean, I definitely knew he could, but it's nice to see as well. But yeah, there were a couple of the Tobias Harris like go and do something possessions against Toronto that I was like, oh my gosh, we need to get away from. I think James Edwards talked about how in Tobias's first stint with the Pistons, like there was a joke that he would score like 15 points in the first quarter and end the game with 18 or whatever it is. So I mean, I hope he can get around it. But yeah, it's nice that the Pistons have other players to go to look and knock down shots and being able to trust those guys. I mean, sometimes they haven't been able to make a shot in really bad situations, but I think we've seen some improvement there as well, just over the next like 5 or 6 games after that first stretch.
Yeah, it's the Tobias Harris experience. Like he'll score like 11 in like one quarter, and then like you look at the box score and it's like 14 points. You're like, bro, what happened? Like you were cooking. Like what the hell just happened? Like we needed to close out these games, man. And then you look, it's just like 6 for 18 shooting. I was like, what the hell? Like I do remember
He's the weirdest kind of streaky. He's the weirdest kind of streaky because, like, you know, you think of streaky, you think of like shooters like Ben Gordon back in the day, where like he'd have one game where he can't miss, and then the next game he can't hit water if he fell out of a boat. But Tobias Harris is like he'll get hot in the first quarter and then he's off, or vice versa. You know, he'll get hot randomly in the third quarter, even though he's been been not terrible, but like couldn't hit a shot the rest of that game. It's the weirdest like specificity of when he's hot and when he's not. I don't know if I've seen anything quite like it. It's pretty funny.
I can't think of a player or a Pistons player, or even just an NBA player for that matter, that can be hot and then just be ice cold in the same game. Like it is honestly
5 game minutes of each other.
It's wild, but you know it's bad in Philly if they want him back over Paul George right now. Like that's how bad it is in Philadelphia. Like look, we'll take Tobias Harris. Like we don't like Paul George.
I mean, I know we're giving him a hard time for being streaky, but I think he is actually playing pretty well outside of that shot going in, which is why he gets paid the money. But, you know, in terms of like leadership and getting people in the right spot, I thought he's been really impactful as a rebounder. This year, I think he's been much better as a rebounder than he has been in the past. That's probably helping to feed into that defensive rebounding success. And I mean, he's been a little bit more turnover prone than he has been historically, but I think he's also passing the ball a little bit more. Pistons are asking him to do that. So, you know, I mean, I think overall it's still positive. I just wish he'd make more jump shots. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, like make more corner threes, please. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking for. I did want to transition into turnovers, and I feel like every post-game podcast I talk about turnovers for at least 5 minutes. I know you guys have probably talked about turnovers on your podcast as well. So
you have to.
How can they fix them? Because I feel like when I'm watching the games, a lot of these turnovers are very fixable mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing to look at is just the lackadaisical ones, like that shouldn't happen. I mean, I know it's a lot easier from when you're talking about it here to when you're actually on the court and trying to make reads and everything like that, but I just feel like there's a handful of turnovers, like definitely not just from Kade, that happened for really like no good reason. I mean, there was the one late in the fourth quarter from Jalen Duren against Toronto where he just got double teamed and pressured and couldn't hold on to the ball, and he thought he was fouled and everything. So things like that where you kind of just get someone in a corner, get them trapped, and then they can't find their way out. I feel like it's not an easy answer because I feel like Cade's going to make turnovers. This young team is going to make turnovers. It's just about limiting the ones that are easy, where there's like a one-arm pass and the ball somehow gets deflected out of bounds and things like that. That shouldn't happen. So, like, I like to say it's easy to go back on the film and be like, what should I do different here? But I know it's a lot different when you get into a new situation and something different. So I'm sure those things will still happen. I think it's just about limiting them wherever possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's still I mean, like you said, it's the age thing, right? Young guards are going to turn the ball over a lot. So in particular with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, I mean, Cade's 23, Ivy's 22. It's going to happen. In terms of like fixing it long term, I think the best thing that they could do is just to continue, JB, that is, can continue to make sure that there are plenty of shooters and plenty of space out on the floor for those two guys to operate within. Because really, like at this point in both of their careers, the best thing you can do for them is to continue to put them in good spots and then just kind of ride the roller coaster. Like Cade's going to learn that he can't make that skip pass, but the problem is he really hasn't had many opportunities to make that skip pass before. So you want him to figure that out now, not in like 5 years, right? Same thing with Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey really only had about 3/4 of a season where he was getting legitimate creation point guard type reps that they're asking him to do again this season now when Cade Cunningham sits on the bench. So like you want Jaden Ivey to learn that he's got to be the guy to go get the ball, get everybody in the right place, and then not make a mistake when he's driving downhill. Can't get the tunnel vision, has to make the easy play. And he is probably most of the time, I think. Honestly, I think more times than not, Cade and Ivy are both making the right decisions. It's just when they make one wrong decision, then they make another, and then another, and then another, before they kind of corral it and get it all back under control. So to me, again, I'm going back on experience. Just continue to put them in good positions. And if they fail, that's okay. This is not the year that you're competing for a championship anyway. That's, a couple of years down the line if everything goes right. So set them up, let them learn, ride the roller coaster. And if it doesn't get better, by like halfway through next year, then you've learned a little bit about what these guys can and can't do, I think. But until then, it's just kind of a wait it out. It'll be great. It'll be bad. And it'll swing wildly within the single game.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Do you believe it's more of like a half court issue? Because I feel like when they play in the half court, it's so predictable at times in terms of like when I watch Cade, sometimes the passes are very lackadaisical. And like you can almost see the defense kind of predict, like, I'm just going to play the passing lane right now. And it's an easy turnover. Do you think he needs to do a better job of kind of like breaking down and processing the play to get the ball out of his hands before the defense tries to double or triple team him?
It's tough because I think it's both. Like, I feel like there have definitely been times where transition turnovers have been, and those are like harder plays to make. Like things are happening really fast as well there. But yeah, in the half court when guys need to make the right read, and depending on the personnel that you have on the floor, like the guy that you might want to go to might be the defense is anticipating that you're going to go to him. So yeah, I mean, I feel like more so maybe I'm leaning towards the half court being more of the problem, but I feel like when you have a team with all these young athletes that want to get out and run, and that'll happen more when Ausar Thompson is back, I feel like turnovers have happened and probably will happen there as well. But honestly, I think maybe the half court ones are a little bit easier to fix.
Yeah, I think half court with Jaden Ivey's probably pretty accurate. He's sometimes struggled and well, not necessarily struggled, but he's had a tendency every now and then to dribble himself into a bad spot, either coming off a handoff or getting downhill out of a pick and roll, which, again, that's just kind of experience. The thing with Cade is, I think at this point we can say pretty confidently, Cade Cunningham has only 3 types of turnovers: careless, mistakes, like honest to goodness mistakes, and then really good plays by the defense. And that there's really nothing in between. So do you wish that he would cut out those careless turnovers? Yeah, absolutely. I do too. But in terms of there was a mistake where he just processed it wrong, or he didn't see something the right way. I at least to my eye, I think they've gone down over the past couple of years. The majority of the turnovers now are just kind of like the one we saw. There was one he just crossed half court and kind of tossed a lazy pass over to Jaden Ivey because he wanted Ivey to initiate the offense and let him get something for Cade, probably to come off a ball screen or a DHO. And then you had, I think it was Davion Mitchell kind of hiding behind one of the bigs and just jumped in front and took the pass. Like that shouldn't have been a pass that he made. That was a careless turnover. But that wasn't bad processing. That was just careless. He shouldn't have thrown a little lollipop pass across half court. So I wish those would go down, but I do think the processing things have started to go away more. Like, I don't think he's missing reads nearly as much as he did maybe last year, for example. I think that's actually gotten better.
Yeah, I know that's what, people that are subscribed to this YouTube channel, they've noticed like the half court stuff at times seems a little predictable. And they wonder with a young athletic team like this, is like, why don't they push the pace and, play the transition game a little bit more? That's something that I don't have the answers to, but I am curious about it.
I feel like it might be just the way Kade plays, but I mean, Kade is a great playmaker in transition too, and like he can finish as well. But I think oftentimes like Kade wants to operate in the half court and get a shot, whether it's for him or making a play for someone else. But yeah, you're right. When you have Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson, even Ron Holland, like maybe you want to get out and run a little bit more, but I feel like it'll always be a pretty big part of the offense as long as like Cade Cunningham is the guy.
Well, and at least offensively, there's a little bit of a trade-off with young teams, right? Mm-hmm. So if you run a lot in transition, you'll probably score a little bit easier. It's easier to get buckets in transition. But then if you win a lot of games doing that and you get to the playoffs where it really slows down and you have to operate much more in the half court, your team might really struggle. And then, the vice versa is, well, you could struggle now, right? Struggle with the slower pace and really try to initiate out of the half court and force your team and your young guys to figure it out as you go. A benefit there is kind of what we've seen so far with the defense, right? There's just less defensive possessions. If you're a good defensive rebounding team, you can kind of stick in games if you want to go that route, which is what they've done. And then hopefully at the end of this, in another year or so, you get into the playoffs and man, you're ready. You got a team that really excels in the half court. I don't want you to Anthony, don't kick me off this podcast, but oddly enough, this is something Monty Williams had talked about before the season started last year. And I think he was right to bring it up. But then in classic last year, Monty Williams fashion, the Pistons played one of the fastest paces in the NBA. So this is the opposite of what happened last year.
Just like everything else.
I won't kick you off for any kind of Monty Williams stuff. If anything, people that are watching this, they go crazy on Monty in the comments. I can't repeat some of the stuff they say because they're absolutely wild. But Monty Williams is just it's kind of go like down memory lane. Like he say one thing like in a shoot around and then do the complete opposite. I'm not gonna play them, all bench lineups. What do you know? All bench lineups again. This is like that whole experience.
Catching that other team off guard. That's what's happening. Yeah, strategery.
I do want to transition to our final topic. I think it's a really fun topic. And the Detroit Pistons are currently sitting in the 7th seed, 6-8. So I want to ask you guys, do you think this team could push for the playoffs or even the play-in tournament this season?
Let me go first because I think we can be more positive, and we can let the positive note end it.
Okay.
I don't think that they can. I know the start so far has been a lot of fun. I'm loving how much competitive basketball they're playing, but I just can't imagine that the East is going to continue to be as bad as it looks right now. Teams like the Pacers are even struggling record-wise, and that's a good squad. They're going to pick it up. So I don't think that 28 wins is going to get you into the play-in this year. It's probably up over 30, and as like we kind of said before, you could do the game where like the Pistons their record could be better than it is right now if a couple bounces go the other direction, but you could do that the other way too, right? They still turn the ball over quite a bit. They play a really slow pace, and they have a good defensive rating with a bunch of not very good defensive players, which does show up in game. Like, you can see that Jalen Duren is still struggling defensively, for example. Cade Cunningham has been better off ball, but if he gets switched onto a quick guard, it's still trouble. Jaden Ivey, the inverse. If he goes off ball, he falls asleep every now and then. It's like all the core problems there on that end are still there. I think that they're going to continue to be fun to watch, and that's what I'm looking forward to. But in terms of will they win more than 30 games and push into the play-in? I think you need to be getting close to 33, 34, 35 to really do that. Again, I can't believe that the East is just going to be this terrible the rest of the season. So, no, I don't think that they can, but I don't think that's a detriment either. I guess I should say it sounds negative, but I think they'll be fun. I think it'll still be competitive. They'll just, the water will find its level, I guess, and they'll miss it.
Okay.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm with you. I think a little more positive, but I think they could compete for the back end of the play-in, like specifically the 10 spot, maybe the 9, but it's just if you look at the standings, Philly's 2-10, Milwaukee's 4-8, like they're gonna turn it on at some point, or hope maybe it'll be better than what it is so far. And even Toronto, who the Pistons beat last night, they're sitting at 2-11, but they don't have Scotty Barnes right now, so they're better than their record. I think it'll be tough. I mean, we saw how the Pistons dealt with that first stretch of the schedule, played some competitive games, but went into a lot of losses. Like, I think they're going to run into more tough stretches in the schedule like that. But overall, I think, like Wes said, they'll continue to compete at the way that they are. And although it won't lead to wins night in and night out, I think they'll find wins here and there to at least keep themselves in the conversation, because they're sitting at 6-8 right now. Like, I don't think I thought they would have 6 wins through 14 games. So I think exceeding expectations would have been competing for one of those final play-in spots. So I think if they're doing that, you have to be ecstatic, because I think the normal, or maybe like realistic expectation was they would be better than they were last season, which isn't difficult, but they would still be better than a few teams in the East, like the Wizards and Brooklyn and maybe Chicago and Charlotte. But even Brooklyn is playing better than I thought they would. So there's not going to be a ton of easy outs, I don't think. But that said, the way the Pistons are competing right now, I feel like even though there's matchups that aren't great for them, I feel like there's not really a game that you can go into, barring injuries on either side, where you can say like, okay, the Pistons are definitely going to lose this one. Like, I don't think there's a way that they're going to come out with it. I think they'll at least put up a fight night in and night out that could make things interesting down the stretch.
And just real quick, Blake, to build on your point there, like you look at the standings right now, good, talented teams under 500 right now. The Hawks, the Heat, the Pacers, the Bucks, the 76ers, and then the Raptors, who we just saw, who are really injury laden right now. You could make an argument that the Hornets might have more talent than Detroit right now. They're sitting at 4-7. The Knicks are somehow only 500. And so, that like crew, I guess, at the bottom that you mentioned with the Bulls, the Wizards, and the Pistons, everyone but the Wizards seem to be overperforming a little bit to expectation right now. And I doubt it's going to last. That's all.
I might be a little reactionary, and I've been taking it week by week. Over the last 3 weeks, they've finished, 2-2.
Yeah.
I think they can compete for a play-in spot. I don't think, they're going to be like a top 6 seed, like I see some people talking like on Twitter right now. But I think playing at the end of the day is, I think, obtainable. Obviously, to your point, Wes, the way that they've played, turning the basketball over, situations where, the offense just isn't consistent. It's a young team. You had mentioned multiple times, this is the 4th youngest team in the NBA. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have lulls in the season. But I think starting off the season pretty decent could help them down the stretch when teams start getting injured. And who knows what they do with the trading deadline. I think that'll tell me more if they're, trading away their veterans, or maybe they get that veteran point guard. Maybe they get a veteran center because Jalen Duren hasn't taken steps in progression defensively that I think a lot of fans want him to get better in. I think just right now in November, I think they could possibly, push for that play-in spot.
So here's the practical question, right? This is the practical question. And if we want to be positive, then you spin it positive. If you want to be negative, you spin it negative. The Pistons are sitting at 7th right now in the East.
Mhm.
There are teams beneath them that are certainly more talented than they are. So the Pacers, the Bucks, the 76ers, and probably the Raptors when the Raptors are healthy. If the Pistons make the play-in, they have to beat out one of those 4 teams. So
Well,
there's your spin.
I think what's interesting about that is like if things continue to go the way that they're going for like the Milwaukees and the Phillies of the world, like Philly, no matter what happens, like you sign Paul George, they're gonna go for it. Their first round pick is protected 1 through 6, but like they just can't waste a year like this. And then Milwaukee
too.
Yeah, they owe their pick to Brooklyn and it's protected 1 through 4. So you can't go into the lottery and be like, I'm gonna be a top 4 team. So they're gonna go for it. But like if Chicago is just not doing anything, like they might want to get up there in the lottery, put their foot in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. So I don't know. I think all those teams definitely like the water is going to level out. Like you said, some of them are going to leapfrog the Pistons, but what if there's 1, maybe 2 that things continue to go super poorly for, and they just kind of are forced into punting, and then that puts the Pistons in a unique situation.
I think it's Milwaukee personally. I just don't see things getting better with Doc Rivers as their coach. I think if they want to get serious, get rid of him personally.
Fair. That's fair.
Oh man, another mid-season.
I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, like Brian Windhorst said 2 weeks ago, they called every team in the league to see if they could make trades. Like that's
already
a red
teams don't make trades right now.
That's a red flag. Like the fact that you've called every team in the league and not one team is willing to help you out, that kind of tells me like it's a locker room issue at this point with Doc Rivers and those guys.
I don't think that the Bucks have another like advisor who has coaching history that could, just like kick out Doc Rivers and take over like Doc Rivers did a year ago.
I mean, you got Darvin Ham. I mean, what could possibly go wrong there?
Oh my God. Yeah. That's an interesting one. I can't see them just fully letting everything go, but if they didn't owe Brooklyn a pick, I could definitely see them being one to do it. But just like when you have Giannis and I mean whatever's going on with Dame, like you can't really force a year, and just the fact that they can only make their own pick if it's in the top 4, I don't think they'll totally ever just like give up. But they're an interesting one for sure. Like I thought that everyone was like sleeping on them a little bit to enter the season as a true contender, but things are not going great.
Too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like it seems like Chris Middleton, like age has just caught up with them. Seems like every time I look, he always has like a major injury over the past 2 seasons. I mean, he's getting up there in age. Dame's getting up there in age. We just saw him this week. I mean, Giannis had to score 60 to get a 7-point win. Like, I think, fire alarm in Milwaukee is definitely going to be an issue. Would not surprise me if maybe they just say, hey, Rondo, coach this team because this is just a mess.
Yeah, that's true. That'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. I mean, yeah, things are not great.
The other interesting to watch would probably be the Raptors, right? How many games do they lose before Scotty Barnes and the rest of the crew kind of get back healthy? I don't think that they're supposed to be out like that much longer, if I remember right, but I'm not sure on that, so don't quote me. But I mean, if they get like a third of the way into the year and they still only have like 4 wins, maybe you just kind of send it at that point if you're the Raptors. I don't know.
I mean, losing Bruce Brown they're probably going to lose him for a majority of the season because he just had arthroscopic surgery on his knee, kind of like what Blake Griffin had a few seasons ago. So he's probably going to be out for a long time. And Toronto's another team where like they have talent, kind of like the Pistons, like they're young, they have their mixture of veterans with like RJ Barrett and Kelly Olynyk, but they're another team where I kind of feel like I don't know what they're actually doing. Like, I don't know if they're rebuilding or they're just trying to do this like a fresh retool and just like try to compete. But I mean,
yeah, they're walking that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Some people think Charlotte's going to fall off a cliff, which wouldn't surprise me if LaMelo Ball gets hurt.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the question. If LaMelo can stay healthy, I think they're a very good team. But that's been the question for a few years now.
Yeah.
So we have 2 Q&A questions. If you guys have maybe 5 5 more minutes, with some
Let's
people
do it.
For sure.
that are watching right now. I can't believe we've got 500 people in here almost on a freaking Saturday afternoon. Let's
wow.
go.
Yeah. Thanks,
Shout out-
everyone.
Shout out to you guys. This is a question from Chili, and he wanted to know, why is Kade moved away from the free throw pull-up shots?
Man, that's an interesting one, because I feel like that's what he goes to a lot. But I don't know. I think from Kade this year, I've sensed more of when the shot's not falling. Like, he was always a willing creator for his teammates, but I think he's almost going there a little bit more, just because he has more players like that are standing out there on in the corner, on the wing, whatever, that he trusts to knock down shots. And maybe Cade's so interesting because I think the mid-range game is obviously one of the lowest percentage shots you can take, but he's so good at it that I feel like you have to give it to him when he can get there. And I trust him to knock down any of those. I just think it might be a little more personnel driven, and Kade trying to create for his teammates, which he always has. I just feel like he has more opportunities and more guys that he can look to and trust to knock down a shot.
Yeah, and so I was just looking up because I was curious. He's still amongst the league leaders in mid-range shot attempts per game. So it's not like he's completely gone away from it, right? He is definitely shooting less, though. So I wonder, too, if, on top of what you brought up, Blake, which I think is a good point and I agree with, maybe, trying to get to the line a little bit more. It seems like he's been a little bit more frustrated this season with some of the calls that he has and hasn't been getting. So I wonder if, maybe he's trying to force the issue a little bit more, force the refs to actually blow a whistle instead of not quite settling, but taking an elbow or free throw line pull-up shot that he otherwise would have if he was maybe a little bit more confident in the whistle he was getting. So maybe that's part of it too. I think he's been trying to force the issue there in the paint and at the rim more than he did last season. And it's unfortunately not resulted in more free throws yet, but hopefully it will soon.
I mean, I don't have the numbers pulled up in front of me, but the eye test tells me he's still shooting mid-range. Like, every game, it seems like he's, still at the elbow or, free throw line. But it seems like he's trying to facilitate more, in my opinion, trying to get his teammates set up. But I'm not really sure why he, quote unquote, moved away from it. Because it's kind of like
it's still 3 a game.
Yeah,
he's still taking 3 a game, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's kind of like almost in that category of like a DeMar DeRozan like a few years ago. Like, it seemed like that's all he shot was just like mid-range shots, and they were just cash. But thank you for the question, Chili. We have one more, and I think this is a fun one. This comes from Red Baron. If we stay in the playoff hunt, I wonder what Trajan will do with Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Simone Fontecchio. Would he still flip one or maybe all of them?
This is such a tough one, because like before the season, I would have said whoever of them or maybe even all of them. But like right now, I feel like you can't give up Malik Beasley because of what he's doing. And he's probably the most valuable guy on the trade market right now because of the player he is, as well as he's on a expiring contract, a small salary. I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr., if another team has the space or players to send back, like, I could see that one too. Like, I think from a Pistons perspective, the one that you'd probably be most willing to give up in a trade would be Fontecchio, because that clears his contract for next season. But the issue is he hasn't had the best start of the season, so he's not necessarily doing a ton to help his value out there on the market. I mean, I think teams, if they're in desperate need of a wing shooter, they'd probably take a shot on him based on what he's done at the past. But like, right now, if I had to pick one, I would probably say Tim Hardaway, because he's showing some value and he can help a contender, but he makes the most money out of all three of these players by far. So that makes it a little bit tougher. Again, I'd be right now after 14 games, I think the one you'd be most willing to give up in a trade is Fontecchio, but he hasn't necessarily improved his trade value either. So it's difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of neutral, I think.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. No, I mean, I think the only thing I would add is just that everything we've heard out of Langdon is that this is a long-term rebuild. He's trying to build this thing for the future to be good in, a couple of years and stay good for a while after that. So look, if they're in the playoff hunt, I don't think that ought to change anything really from his perspective. There's still a lot of decisions that are going to need to be made, and I don't think you should be getting greedy because you're sitting there in contention for the 9th seed in the playoffs, especially if it's off the back of a lot of success from Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, things like that. I would actually expand the list. I think he would absolutely be considering those 3 guys. As much as I'd love to lock down Beasley and keep him, I think he's a great vet piece. I'm sure that they're going to at least consider what they could get for him. They'd probably consider what they could get for Tobias Harris. And look, Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren are both in that contract extension window now, this upcoming offseason. If by the trade deadline, Trajan Langdon thinks that one of them is definitely not going to get extended, then that guy's probably on the trade block, because that's when your asset's going to be most valuable. The team that's acquiring that player can look at what they do within their system, within their roster for the rest of this season, and then make their own extension decision in the offseason as well, instead of doing it in the offseason, having to go through restricted free agency the year following. So yeah, I think that it's actually a rather large list, almost regardless of where the Pistons are in the standings. The only caveat there is if they go on some massive streak here, and Kade, Ivey, Ausar, Ron Holland, Jalen Duren, all these guys are playing so well that the Pistons look like the Pacers did last year, where they're actually like not just in contention for maybe the playoffs, but they're sitting there looking like, hey, maybe we could get home court advantage in the playoffs. Okay, now maybe we're going to revisit this. But in general, I would anticipate that even if you're looking at, hey, maybe they're going to be 9, 10, 8 even, let's see what we can get at the deadline. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the Bleacher Report article that they put out today with Kawhi Leonard to the Pistons.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I think that's why a lot of people.
Stewart's another name I was thinking of. He's probably up that they would think about that as well, even though I'd hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I opened my phone before we went on, and I see Kawhi Leonard to the Pistons, so I read it. It's like, Tobias Harris, Ausar Thompson, Ron Holland to the Clippers for Kawhi. I'm like, no, we're not doing that again. We're not
trading Tobias back to the Clippers.
That would be diabolical. I'm just saying.
Tobias doing the reunion tour.
Oh yeah, but I saw that article. I see people talking about it, saying that they would trade for Kawhi. It's just like, no, like given our history with injuries and the way we've kind of like, I think that's been like the one thing on the Pistons as of late is the way they've handled injuries and like not having like so much good clarification on injuries. Like Bobby Clipman's been out for like a month, and we still don't know when he's gonna play. It's just like, I don't think you want to bring Kawhi here and his uncle and then them calling the shots of when he's gonna play and how he's gonna play. And I don't like your team doctor. He's gonna have his own team doctor type of thing. Like, I'm out on that.
And look, you don't want to be good right now. As nice as it would be for fans like Kade, Ivey, Holland, all these guys are still super young. You want to be good, late next year or the year after. And you want to be legitimately good. You don't want to be, like the 7th seed in 2 years. You're aiming much higher than that. So would Kawhi Leonard help this team right now today? Yeah, probably. But in 2 years, no. And you're going to have to give up assets to do it. I'm totally with you. That's a terrible idea. I don't know who greenlit that publishing. That's awful.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. And I was like,
it would never happen at Sports Illustrated, Blake. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Hey, not my lane either. So if if a real trade happens, there we go. But yeah, that's a little hey, a slow Saturday. Let's try to get something out there.
Put the tinfoil hat on and like I don't even know if Kawhi could suit up for 20 games for the Pistons. Honestly, like a lot of people are saying Blake Griffin 2.0. At least Blake played and got us to the playoffs. Like I don't even know if Kawhi could do that right now because I don't know. His whole injury thing has just been like a complete mess. But I do want to wrap up this podcast, you guys. Give you guys the floor again to plug and promote your podcast and where people can find you at.
Yeah, listen to us on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel for the Pindown. We record weekly. We aim for Thursday evenings, but just with the schedule, we're kind of all over the place now. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Blake Silverman, and you can follow Wes at The Real Wes D3. Of course, check out everything that Wes is doing with the Pistons Pulse as well. And also just all the written work that us, Sean Corp, Laz, and everyone else has over at DetroitBadBoys.com, and Wes, anything else as well.
No, nothing else to add. I think you covered it all. Anthony, man, thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah,
we got to do the back-to-back crossover episodes. I feel like that's pretty rare. So this was great.
Yeah, I think this is my second crossover I've ever done. I feel like more people in the Pistons community should do it because there's so much fun.
It's fun.
Yeah, like we should just have like a Pistons roundtable with all the podcasts. Like that would be
that'd be sweet.
That would be so much fun. We probably wouldn't get a word in edgewise. It'd be like 10 people like trying to talk.
StreamYard can't handle it.
Yeah,
too many. We'd have to make cuts. That'd be bad.
Oh my! I wouldn't like whoever had to do the podcast audio that day. I would not be them.
Yeah.
No, you don't edit that. You just take peek behind the curtain. You don't take any cloud recordings from that. You don't take any mono-track audio. No. You just download the YouTube video, rip the audio, and hit publish. That's it. No funny business from there. That'd be too much.
If you guys do want to go support Blake and Wes, I have their Twitters. If you guys want to go follow them, also have the Detroit Bad Boys in the Pindown where you guys can catch them weekly. Definitely go check out their podcast. Much like myself, they answer your guys' questions because I know that's one thing in these YouTube comments. You never answer my questions. I know you guys do it all the time. I try to catch your podcast when I'm not working, but we're going to wrap up this podcast, you guys. We will see you tomorrow after the Detroit Pistons and Washington Wizards for our post-game podcast, but see you guys tomorrow. Take care and go Lions.